I'm Jack Grayle, and this is the video for the 6th week's presentation of PGM Praxis 50 Rites for 50 Nights. So welcome. I hope all of you are well and eager to dig into something new. Last week we did stellar sorcery, which I absolutely love. We were exploring the celestial sphere with this conjuration of the bear constellation, right? So in order to have some contrast, because we've got 50 nights after all, since we were in the celestial sphere last time, we're going to go to the earthly sphere today and discover something chthonic, something of the material plane. And it's very practical, right? We're going to look at two spells that help us reap or harvest a plant or an herb, meant to be used for ritual purposes, of course. Lots of us might pick a carrot or a potato and we don't think much about doing it. But many of us feel, even intuitively, that if you're going to cut a branch to use as a wand, or if you're going to harvest a young sapling to use as a stang, or if you're going to cut a piece of myrrh or a piece of a blackthorn or some item to be used, mistletoe perhaps, in a ritual setting, we need to say some words. We need to make an offering. We need to sort of acknowledge what's being done to do it right, so that we have, in essence, the goodwill of what we are harvesting, right? So there's two excellent spells in this regard. So you get two for the price of one this week. And then we're going to be looking at where these spells lead, which I think is to an ability far more exciting and interesting even than reaping magical herbs. So stay with me and see if you agree, all right? So the first spell we're going to look at is very simple. The first of the two spells is called Spell for Picking a Plant, PGM 4, line 286, right? It's not long at all. You'd go out, you're about to pick a plant to be used for ritual purposes, presumably, and you would say this: I'm picking you, such and such a plant, with my 5-fingered hand, I, so-and-so, you give your name, and I am bringing you home, so that you may work for me a certain purpose. I adjure you, meaning I compel you, by the undefiled name of God, if you pay no heed to me, the earth which produced you will no longer be watered as far as you're concerned. Ever in life again, if I fail in this operation, muthabar nach barnakoka braheo menda la brahase, fasfa, bendeo, fulfill for me the perfect charm. Three interesting things about this. First of all, it's short, which is nice, right? There's not some 15-minute rite to gather a thorn or a bit of herb. It lasts about a minute. You tell the plant what you're doing, right, which is always reasonable. You explain what's going to happen and how it's going to be used. You give it its name. You introduce yourself, which is nice, yeah. And then there's what I call a threat narrative, which is one of the techniques of ancient sorcery. You say what will happen if it does not comply. You say, if you do not comply, if you do not go along with this, then the ground on which you're on, you plant, will never be watered. It may seem sort of a jerk move, but the fact is, there is a sorcerous way of compelling cooperation of spirits, herbs, and even the gods themselves. And in Egyptian magic, one of those ways is the threat narrative. And there's something that's the opposite, which I call a success narrative, which we'll discuss later. But it's present here. You basically threaten the plant. You say, I'm going to do this. It's going to be great. Come along with me. This is my name. And by the way, if you don't comply, something bad is going to happen to you, and the bad thing will be this. So it can't claim it didn't know, right? You're also you're implying that you have the power to make that happen. Remember the Aphrodite spell, Yahweh, 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 taking the form and the place of a demiurge, a creator deity, right? Well, who could make it so this plant could not drink again? A creator deity. So it sort of implies that you have a deity's powers and influence. There's the magical voices. Then very interestingly, it says at the end, fulfill for me this perfect charm. But what's fascinating is in the footnotes, Betts says it's unusual, the word fulfill, because in the Greek, it's not in the second person singular, as you would say to an herb, fulfill for me the charm. It's in the second person plural. And Betts conjectures and says, can the subject be the voces magici themselves? can the subject of this phrase be the magical voices themselves? Well, of course, that is what's happening. Those 5 magical words which you call forth, you say the words, the magical words, and then, because remember, they're spirits. They come when you call them, and you say, fulfill for me this perfect charm. You're not talking to the plant anymore. You're talking to the spirits you called forth. It's a beautiful, wonderful example of how the magical voices are actually doing the heavy lifting here. You're not doing it. You're the one who goes out, talks to a plant, and says the magic names. The spirit allies come. You tell them, do this. And they do it because you know their name. What's their name? The magical voices. Yeah? Simple, clean, clear, a very neat threat narrative in it, and a beautiful example of how the ones doing the heavy lifting in the unseen world are the magical voices. Yeah. There's a more involved one, which I'm going to include. And even then, when I say more involved, I say that it's, it's actually not much more long than the others. But I'm going to go ahead and read it and see what you say. This PGM spell, which I'll give the citation of in my notes, talks about how in this sort of more extended version, you find an herb that you want for a powerful working. You may fumigate by circling 3 times with fumigation after purifying your own body, presumably with the smoke, and perhaps sprinkling natron around, right? So there's explicit reference to purifying yourself, purifying your space, both with natron on the ground, which remembers like baking soda and salt, and with fumigating it with incense. And then pour out some milk, so you've made an offering. You pull up the plant, invoking by name the daemon to whom the herb is being dedicated. So the daemon who the herb is meant to work for, be it Helios or Apollo or Hecate, right? And here's the invocation, which I'll read part of. You say to the plant, you were sown by Kronos. You were conceived by Hera. You were maintained by Ammon. You were given birth by Isis. You were nourished by Zeus, the god of rain. You were given growth by Helios and dew. You are the dew of the gods. You are the heart of Hermes. You are the seed of the primordial gods. You are the eye of Helios. You are the light of Selene. You are the zeal of Osiris. You are the beauty and the glory of Uranus. You are the soul of Osiris's daemon, which revels in every place. You are the spirit of Ammon. As you have exalted Osiris, so exalt yourself, and rise, just as Helios rises each day. Your size is equal to the zenith of Helios. Your roots come from the depths, but your powers are in the heart of Hermes. Your fibers are the bones of Nevis. Your flowers are the eye of Horus. Your seed is Pan's seed. I am washing you in resin, as I also wash the gods, because they would bathe the gods' statues. And as I do this for my own health, you also be cleaned by prayer. Give us power, as Ares and Athena do. I am Hermes. I am acquiring you with good fortune and the good daemon, Agathodaemon, both at a propitious hour and a propitious day that is effective for all things. Then you roll the stalk you've plucked in a pure linen cloth, throw in some seeds of wheat, mix it with honey, and you depart. Several interesting things. It's longer, right? There's sort of a similarity between the two. There's no magical voices in this one. It's interesting. In essence, you are treating the plant like a god. First of all, physically, you wrap it in linen, which is what you did with a corpse. Throw in some barley and honey, and some mummified bodies had honey because it was a preservative. You were treating the plant like a pharaoh, like a god that you bear back with you after declaring its divinity. What is all this stuff? You are sown by Kronos, conceived by Hera, maintained by Ammon, given birth by Isis. You are the dew of the gods, the heart of Hermes. What is all this, right? On the first listen, it sounds perhaps like you're just flattering this plant. Oh, you're the greatest plant. But that's really not what's happening. You're not saying you're the most beautiful stalk of garlic I've ever seen. Oh, no other stalk of garlic is so lovely. That's not what's happening. You are declaring the plant's spiritual and divine attributes. But it's more than that, right? There's something else going on. What is it? Let's look at some other examples. Another spell in the PGM. Brief. Listen to this. A spell to some myrrh. Myrrh, myrrh, who serve at the side of the gods, who stir up rivers and mountains, who burn up the marsh of Akalda, who consume with fire the godless Typhon, who is the ally of Horus, the protection of Anubis, the guide of Isis. That's fascinating. Myrrh did all those things? Because none of them are referenced in any myths that I'm aware of. Here's another section. What's going on here? Once again, to myrrh. Sorcerer says to some myrrh he's going to use, "You are the myrrh with which Isis was anointed when she went to the bosom of Osiris, her brother, and gave him her favor on that day." Saying you were the perfume that Isis wore as she went and made love to Osiris when they conceived Horus. Well, where is that written, right? We lost something? Did he just come up with that? Here's another. Listen to this one. Mustard, meaning mustard seed. You are not mustard seed, but the eye of Helios, the inner parts of the bull of Apis. Once again, here's these divine attributions, which we've never heard before, but it begins with telling the herb it's not itself. So what's happening here? Let's look at another spell. You would say this to a cup of wine. You are wine, you are not wine, but the head of Athena. You are wine, you are not wine, but the guts of Osiris, the guts of Yahweh, Pakerbeth. And there's some magical voices. Well, what is this? Because I'm quite sure there's no legend or myth that says wine is the head of Athena and the guts of Osiris. Another spell. Listen to this. You are the olive oil. You are not the olive oil, but the sweat of the good daemon, Agatha daemon, the mucus of Isis, the utterance of Helios, the power of Osiris, the favor of the gods. Serve me, ... Once again, olive oil, the mucus of Isis, the utterance of Helios. It's very clear listening to these. There's a similarity. There's a sameness, right? This phrase that is used in some of these spells, wine, you are not wine. Mustard seed, you are not mustard seed. Olive oil, you are not olive oil. You are. And they name these divine attributes. A person, not very conversant with the myth might think, well, maybe each one of these has a separate myth that each of these is associated with. It's a reasonable idea. When we conjure the gods, we call upon them sometimes by declaring their associations. Hecate, you, the one who led Persephone to the underworld and accompanied her, etc. But that's not what's happening here. The sorcerer in this case is awakening the ingredient, is declaring its divinity, is calling forth the divinity within it to make it a magical substance. The sorcerer doesn't just want to use the plant myrrh. The sorcerer doesn't just want to use the substance of olive oil or mustard seed, right? The sorcerer wants to call forth the subtle essence of these objects. All of these have a physical form. But the sorcerer is not going to do physical work with them. He's not going to fry up a chicken or season a piece of lamb. He's going to call spirits. He's going to placate gods. He's going to invoke mighty powers. So that sorcerer is calling upon the subtle essence. And not just any essence, but the divinity within the physical thing he's using, right? Or she's using, yeah. And the way they do that is by this declaration, you are not what you thought you were. Imagine if someone said to you, someone you trusted, someone you looked up to, said to you in a moment of candor, hear me, you are not what you thought you were. You are the ally of Osiris. You are the beloved of Isis. You are the best friend of Hermes. You are the chosen of Hecate. You are the true son of Zeus. You are the horns of Ammon. You are the crescent brow of Selene. Think of how that would make you feel. Can you almost feel that rising sense of power and recognition and the little thought in the back of your head? I knew it, right? I knew it. I knew I had it within me. I knew I was special. It's not a lie. The sorcerer isn't lying to these plants saying, you're special, when they're not, right? We talk about when we declare the godhood in ourselves, like in the second spell we read with the collecting the herb, you notice the declaration of the God face, the theophany in there. At the very end of the spell, he says, I am Hermes, right? The sorcerer declares he's Hermes and capable of working this magic. The sorcerer isn't lying. The sorcerer is invoking the Hermesness within him or herself and calling down Hermes and calling forth the Hermes, and the sorcerer in this time and this place becomes the nexus at which Hermes appears in the form of a mask, a guise, right, which I take on. I am Hermes, because I recognize whatever that Hermes powers is, that Wednesday power, that Mercury power, whatever, that Thoth power. If we are created in part by the gods and they interwove themselves into us, therefore I call those strands, those skeins of Hermesness within me to become apparent, to take over. That is my identity at this point, right? That we declare it of ourselves, and in these spells, we declare it of the substance. We call forth the divinity of the substance so that we are dealing with the subtle essence, which is plastic, which is fluid, which is spiritual, which is sensual, which is not concrete. So what, right? It's interesting. How does it apply? Maybe you do those 2 or 3 spells, you say the words. How do you apply it? Here's how you apply it. Okay. What is happening in these spells is the sorcerer transforming, transmuting the substance he's dealing with into something new. It is itself. It is wine, but it is not wine. It is olive oil, but it is not olive oil, because the sorcerer has transformed it by their words and their will. Yeah? Not that we can make things happen with our mind, but we call forth the powers on our words, have force, and become beings which are allies in our magic. This is the primal skill that is needed in the many spells of the PGM where you do not have and cannot get the ingredient. Many of the spells have ingredients you can get, obviously, but some have ones we don't, right? And there's a tendency, because we want to do it right, right? When we come across a spell like that, we're like, oh, this is a great spell. Oh, this is an awesome spell. Oh, I love this spell. And at the very end, it says, you know, you need the blood of a black dog in the body of a tick to be offered in the fire. You think, oh my God, I was so excited about that spell, right? But I don't have a black dog, or it's not tick season, you know, so forget that one. Move on to the next one, right? If we can get the literal substance that is referenced, it's good to get it. And if you can find someone who can get it for you, even if it costs some money or takes some time or is inconvenient, it's good to get it, because that's the prima materia that's referred to, right? But remember, what matters isn't the prima materia. What matters is the spiritual essence, the subtle substance of it. And the sorcerer can create and draw forth the subtle substance with his or her workings and words, just as we saw there. So, for instance, using this technology, we can use it as a hack. Say there's a spell I want to do very much. I'm calling forth Hecate. But the spell in the PGM requires I have the blood of a black dog in the body of a tick. Would it make sense? Hecate, one of her epiphanies, is the black dog, right? So to have a bit of the blood of a black dog would be a nice epiphany of Hecate to incorporate into the spell. Let's say there's no way I can get it, but I want to do the spell. I don't want to just ignore that instruction. What do I do? Here's what I would do, right? And this is just me speaking for myself. But to apply the techniques here that we've just read and these spells, what I'm about to describe would not be out of sorts. It would be consistent with that traditional current. I have here a bit of wine, right? If I could not have the blood of a black dog and the body of a tick, I would take a bit of wine, which typically has a resonance with blood and a sort of a stand-in with blood, certainly in the Dionysian mysteries and in Catholicism, obviously. I would take the wine and I would conjure it as the sorcerer has conjured these materials. Purify myself in and out, pick a day that was conducive, say, in my spell, to a Hecatian working, perhaps a Saturday because she's a Titan, or a Monday because Hecate Selene is frequently invoked as a conflation of that great goddess. Perhaps I even wait till the new moon, right, if I can, or at least till the hour of the moon, perhaps, if I'm invoking Hecate Selene. I call upon her, I recite her epithets, I ask her to aid me and strengthen my work, and then I lift up this bit of wine, and I say, wine, you are not wine. Wine, you are not wine. No. You are the blood of Mera, the dog, who is associated with the star Sirius, which is associated with Hecate. Wine, you are not wine. You are the spittle of Cerberus, the black three-headed dog who guarded the gates of the underworld, who was dragged forth by Hercules. Yes, wine, you are not wine. You are the sweat of Orthos, the other black dog who guarded the underworld, the two-headed dog who was favored by Persephone. Wine, you are not wine. And I might name a few other famous dogs in myth and legend, yes. And I might say, wine, you are the blood of a black dog. You are the blood found in the belly of a tick that fell from a black dog. Wine, you are not wine. You are the blood of a black dog. And this you must be, O wine, or else be rejected by the vine that bore you, or else be scorned by every living thing, or else have Hecate glare at you, that you shall sour and evaporate in misery. I've incorporated a threat narrative, right? I say, I call you forth, I call you forth, I call you forth, that which is the blood of a black dog, yes, that which is the spittle of Cerberus, that which is the sweat of Orthos, that which is the hair of, Mera. And then I recite the magical words in one of the spells we've read. And perhaps I declare my god face, I am Hermes, who says this? Or perhaps if I don't want to be Hermes, I say, I am Medea, who said this, who was a witch of Hecate. Or I say, I am Circe, who was a great witch of Hecate. Hear my words, I am Circe, who on the island of Aia transformed Odysseus' crew to swine, a priest of Hecate. Circe am I. Hear my words and respond. Wine, you are not wine, but the blood of a black dog. And perhaps I use one of the primal spells and formulas of compulsion. Perhaps I say, Maskeli, maskelo, funun cantabao, oreo bezagra, rexicton, hippocton, piripeganex. I recite these words, or several others like them, whatever I choose, because again, it's more art than science. And I end it with a prayer. Hecate, you have heard my words, aid my working, make this wine the blood of a black dog, that this spell will work and have force. I conjure you, and if I want to add another threat narrative, or if I want to add some more magical voices, there's other technologies we'll be discussing, I add them, or else I make an offering, I burn some myrrh for her, and I ask her to make the magic happen, and I wind it up. This is still wine. It will still be wine after my spell. We're not transforming the literal substance, right? This isn't a class on, on alchemy or something like that. But the subtle essence from a traditional sorcerer's perspective will have changed. I would have changed this wine into the blood of a black dog, so that it can be used in the ritual, because I've drawn forth through my spirit allies the blood of a black dogness that abides in this wine. Would it be better to have the blood of a black dog? Well, it'd be easier, right? I might have to do that. But was that so hard? How hard is it to look up online dogs in myth and legend in ancient Greece? We could have also called it the blood of Anubis, or Wepwaret, the Egyptian dog gods, wolf gods that guarded the underworld. That would have been appropriate too. Mix them up, do them both, right? So I have magically created the blood of a black dog because I had no other option. And so I do the spell, confident that my magic works. Yeah. The implication here, I hope you can grasp how valuable this would be, right? Because there's plenty of spells in the PGM we will not have the materia. Sometimes because it's just too expensive, it's out of your reach. Sometimes because we can't tell what it is, because they use a nickname for it in the book, and 2,000 years later we can't tell what they're talking about. Or sometimes because they name something that's, it's an endangered species. Or it's something that's unethical to harvest now. Yeah, they ask for, elephant ivory. Well, we can't get it, right? I mean, they don't do that, but that's the idea. And in that case, instead of just saying, well, I'll pretend that ingredient wasn't there, or instead of saying, well, I guess I can't do that spell, we say, I'm going to rely on my own resourcefulness. I will make this spell happen. I will make this ingredient happen by calling forth its subtle essence using the technologies of the PGM known to me. And then you get creative. You think to yourself, what could I use? What would be the closest thing to what I want to use? And what magic words and associations can I call forth to make it happen? What gods and allies can I ask to aid me? Right? It's exciting, it's creative, it's interesting, and it is entirely within the vein of traditional magic, and incidentally, entirely within the vein of contemporary spiritual magic too. I hope it will have occurred to many of you that in the Catholic Mass, during the transubstantiation, the priest raises up the wine. He says, do this in memory of me. And the wine, if you're a good Catholic, becomes both wine and the God. And you drink it, taking into yourself both wine and the God. The subtle essence of the Christness is drawn forth from the wine and becomes divine blood by the words and the workings of the priest. We're not priests, but we are sorcerers of the PGM. We too can do this, and this is how we do it. We have the words, we know the associations, or we can find them out. We're creative, self-reliant, we're daredevils, right? And we can make it happen. So I hope you enjoy this spell about gathering herbs, but I hope even more you hold close the lesson to be gleaned from these similar spells in the PGM. If you cannot find what you need, create it. Draw forth the subtle essence of the spiritual materia from that which you have on hand. You're capable of it, and it's an exciting and deeply traditional praxis. Thank you for joining me this week, and I hope you have a great week.